Today we're going to dive into a pretty powerful modern parable. It's all about what happens when you confront the darkest parts of yourself. It's a story about a character called the Jester, a mysterious forest, and a shadow that gets tired of just following along.
I mean, just think about that for a second. That dark shape that mimics your every move, your silent companion, what if one day it just stopped? And it didn't just stop, it solidified. It rose up, not as a reflection, but as a real, physical roadblock. Well, that's the wild question at the very heart of the story we're exploring today.
Okay, so a shadow blocks the path. Our story kicks off with the Jester, and he's retreating into this ancient, kind of gloomy forest. You get the sense the trees are leaning in, like they're whispering about him. He's probably looking for some quiet time, some clarity, but what he's about to find is the exact opposite of that.
And this is where things get really weird. This isn't just a trick of the light, okay? The story says his silhouette literally peels itself off the dirt. It stretches up, becomes solid, dense, a towering figure made of something like black volcanic glass, standing right there in front of him.
And this shadow, it's not just a visual. No, it's a full-on sensory assault. It's breathing out this thick, violet smoke. The air smells like ozone. You know that smell after a lightning strike? Mixed with something ancient and deep. And then, total silence. The whole forest just stops, like it's holding its breath. This is no longer some psychological concept. It's a real, physical thing.
All right, so next up, the great adversary speaks. And yep, this thing can talk. It has a voice, and more importantly, it has a purpose. It's not there to just be a monster. It's there to challenge the Jester's entire worldview, to poke holes in everything he believes about himself.
And its first words are just chilling. It hisses, "I am the spirit who denies." Wow. That one line tells you everything you need to know. Its entire reason for being is negation. It is the cosmic no to the Jester's yes. It's the force of opposition finally given a voice.
So what is the great adversary, really? Well, think of it as that cynical voice of doubt we all have inside our heads. It's the part of us that looks at our biggest dreams, our highest ideals, what the philosopher Nietzsche called our sacred yes to life, and just rolls its eyes, calling it all a foolish, arrogant fantasy. It is, basically, our ultimate inner critic. And the adversary comes prepared. It lays out a whole list of charges against the Jester. It calls him a hypocrite, says he's just wearing darkness like a cool costume instead of truly integrating it. It tells him he's nothing more than a new kind of priest worshiping his own ego. These aren't just random insults, they're surgical strikes aimed right at his deepest fears about himself.
So how does the Jester react to this brutal takedown? You'd think he'd fight back, right? But he doesn't. Not really. Instead, he has this moment of incredible clarity. He realizes this isn't a fight, it's a test. It's the ultimate test of his core belief, a concept called amor fati, the love of one's fate.
And you can see his whole mindset shift right here. The initial instinct for any of us would be to see the shadow as an enemy we have to destroy. But his realization is so much deeper. He sees that the shadow is actually necessary. It's the friction, like how a wheel needs the ground to push against in order to move forward. That's what this is. The shadow's no is what makes his yes possible.
And that, right there, is the core of amor fati. It's not just about accepting the good stuff in your life. That's easy. This is about actively loving everything, especially the harshest, most destructive parts. It's about looking at that part of yourself that wants to tear everything down and loving it, not in spite of its nature, but because of its nature.
And the Jester's response to the shadow is just incredible. He says this. He totally reframes the entire situation. The shadow's denial isn't an obstacle to his story. It's the ink he writes it with. Without that dark contrast, the pages of his life would just be blank. The denial is what gives everything else its meaning.
Here's another great way to picture it. The adversary is like a hammer, and it's testing the Jester's values. If his beliefs are solid gold, the hammer will just bounce off, and they'll ring true. But if they're just cheap lead with a thin layer of gold paint, if they're fake, that hammer is going to shatter them. And in the Jester's mind, if his values can be shattered, they deserve to be anyway.
So this leads us to the climax of the story, embracing the violet fire. But, and this is so important, it's not a climax of battle. Look at the subtitle, The Surrender to Necessity. It's about what happens when you stop trying to put out the fire and instead you just accept it as a vital part of who you are.
And as the Jester accepts this, something amazing happens.
The two forces, these polar opposites, they start to sync up. The shadow's violet breath, that smoke of pure denial, starts to pulse in the exact same rhythm as the jester's own heart. This is the first real sign of integration. They're becoming one system.
But the shadow has one final crushing question. It's the ultimate test. It basically asks the jester, can you live through all of your failures, over and over and over again, for all of eternity? And can you do it without hiding behind your clever jokes? Can you face the pure, unfiltered weight of your own mistakes forever? It is a devastating, nihilistic challenge.
The jester doesn't answer with words. His answer is an action. He walks straight into that violet smoke, he physically embraces the adversary, and he pulls it back into himself, into his own skin. And notice that key word again. He surrenders to it. He doesn't conquer it, he accepts its necessity and lets that violet fire become a part of his own bloodstream.
So what's the result of all this? A new, weighted light. The story doesn't really have an ending. It has a transformation. The jester keeps walking his path, but something about him is fundamentally different. He's moving into a whole new way of being.
See, the shadow's purpose gets transformed. It's not an enemy anymore. Now it's a permanent internal governor. That spirit who denies is now the voice inside him that provides a crucial check and balance. It's the thing that will keep his ambition, his ego, from spinning out of control into madness or tyranny.
And because of that, his whole journey changes. Remember, it started as a retreat from the world, but now it's an advancement. He's no longer running away. He's actively moving forward into a more complete, more whole, more authentic version of himself.
And that brings it all back to us, to you. This whole parable leaves us with a really powerful question to sit with. Think about your own life, your own goals, your own big yes. Now, what's the denial? What's the friction, the doubt, the great no that you're always fighting? Because this story suggests that maybe, just maybe, that thing you're fighting is the very thing that gives your yes all of its power and all of its meaning.